Hello and welcome to Writing Scholarship Essays. Whether you are looking at scholarship opportunities where you have a lot of time to work on it, or you've got a deadline that's looming, we hope that this presentation is going to help you make that deadline, get your materials together, and be ready to apply for those scholarships. So if you've got a scholarship and that deadline is coming up, it's go time. So let's get started. When you're unfamiliar with applying for scholarships, the first place to start is the school that you're attending or planning to attend. So if you're going to Ohio State University or Oregon State University, start with your school. I'm talking from Portland Community College, so if you are a PCC student, that's the first place that you want to go to apply for scholarships. Next up on the list is look at scholarships specifically for students in your state. In Oregon, we have the Oregon Office of Student Access and Completion. In Washington State, it's the Washington Scholarship Coalition. Look for scholarship opportunities for students in your state. Your best odds at getting scholarship are usually from the school that you are attending. As you're working on your scholarship essays, we really recommend that you create a digital file folder and save all of your materials so that as you're finding opportunities to apply for, you have a lot of material to go back and reference in the future. In this file folder, save any materials and all versions of your essays that you're pulling together for your scholarships. Save any autobiographical writing from your schoolwork. So for example, if you take a class and you write about maybe your family of origin, save that material in this folder because you may be able to use it in the future. You'll update and reuse this material every year as you're going through school and applying for scholarships on a regular basis. Here's some examples of Portland Community College essays. Sometimes colleges will change those essay questions, so you do want to check and just make sure what are the current questions that your school is using. We'll notice here that question number 1 is what is your career goal and educational plan to meet this goal? We're going to talk about that first. The second part is what inspired you to choose this field of study and career. A couple of other questions that they've used is describe a significant change or challenge that has occurred in your life in the last 10 years. How did you respond and what did you learn about yourself? You're going to see this question repeated in other college scholarship essays that you're going to encounter. And another example is what is your greatest strength or characteristic and how will this help you to be successful at PCC? So we'll also be talking about strengths. In Oregon, there are 4 essay questions that are typically used for the scholarship essays. Scholarship essay questions are also often called prompts. So you will see them called essay prompts. You'll see them called essay questions. And you'll also see them called personal statements. These are pretty much the same exact thing. They're pretty much just a question that you're answering to write an essay for a scholarship. Okay? So in Oregon, here are several examples. Personal statement 1. What are your specific educational plans and career goals and why? What inspires you to achieve them? I think you can see where the overlap is with the previous examples that we talked about. Personal statement 2. What have you done for your family or community that you care the most about and why? Personal statement 3. Describe a personal accomplishment and the strengths and skills you use to achieve it. And personal statement 4. Describe a significant change or experience that has occurred in your life. How did you respond and what did you learn about yourself? So we're going to break these down into parts so that we can talk about how you can attack each one. Okay, so the first thing we want you to do is read the question and separate the parts. In this case, we're looking at essay question 1, which has a couple of questions in it, and the very first part. So section 1 there is what is your career goal? So next up, we're going to talk about what are some sources to identify your career goal if you don't have one, and if you have a very short deadline and you really don't have enough time to work much on your career goal, how to handle that situation. There are great tools and resources out there to do research on your career goal. If you're already in college, or if you're still in high school, you might start with your career center at your school. There are many assessments that you might have access to. One free one that you can get on the web is at My Next Move, and they have an assessment called the Interest Profiler. You can also find answers to the question, what can I do with a major in a particular subject area with our friends over at Portland State University. They have provided us with these wonderful pages at pdx.edu/careers. They are really helpful pages. You can also locate professional and trade associations for people who are working in a field of endeavor that you're considering and talk to them about what they like, what they don't like, and what they feel the best academic preparation is. Consider your career goals by thinking about what kind of people do you want to have an impact on in your life? Is it kids? Is it elders? Is it people in recovery from alcohol and drug abuse? Is it people of color? Think about what kinds of problems you want to solve. Do you want to work on hunger? Do you want to work on global warming? Do you want to make improvements in the technologies that we use? What kind of interests do you have? Do you like writing? Do you like speaking? Do you like teaching, art, and music? Please take a moment before we continue to pause and make some notes about the kinds of people you want to impact, the kinds of problems that you want to solve, and the kind of interests that you want to use when you're doing your career. Okay, great. I hope you have some notes. So now, let's say that you said, I really care about working with elders, and I really care about improvements of technologies, and I like computers. So I want to do something with elders, with improvements in technology and computers. Here's how we can put that together into a way to describe in your essay what you want to do with your career goal. Here's a summary of what you might say if you chose elders, you chose technology, and you chose computers. I want to improve the experience of elders in our community by working on technological solutions like websites that are easy to read or medical devices that are easy to navigate for the visually impaired. Next, we want to tell them why you chose it, why you care about these things. And we don't want to just say it, we want to try to show it. So let's use details. Let's use examples. First, we're going to consider a less effective example. So you might say, I enjoy volunteering at the library. That's nice, but I think we can make it better. Let's use more details to really paint the picture. Here's an example of a more effective way to say it. I'm a volunteer at the Multnomah County Library with the Empower Young Readers organization. While volunteering at the library, I read stories to the preschoolers. When you use details and examples, it makes it much more vivid for the reader. We're trying to paint a picture for them. Remember that an effective example would include what you have seen, what inspires you, what you want done. If we think about the example of somebody who wants to help elders with technology and volunteering in a library, they might say, I love helping out in the library, and when I'm working with elderly people, I can see that there's a lot of things that are hard for them to use that could be much easier. And I'd like to see more assistive technologies and more effective technologies to support and help those people access those resources. Okay, so we're reading the questions, we're separating the parts. So now we're looking at the second part of this question, which is, what is your educational plan to meet this goal? If you've already sorted out what your major is, what your career goal is, where you're going to go to university or community college, that's great. You can write about that. Use details, make it interesting. But what if you don't? If you don't, then your plan is to make a plan. So you might write something like this. My plan is to research academic programs and universities to see which opportunities fit my interests. An educational plan consists of the school, major, and activities that you plan to participate in. For example, you might say, I plan to finish my transfer degree at Portland Community College and transfer to Portland State University for a business degree focused on supply chain management. If you don't know yet, your goal is to do research and make a plan. And now we get to the second question in that first essay. What inspired you to choose this field of study and career? If you remember the first time you met a dentist and it inspired you, or you got very good treatment from a nurse and that inspired you, you can talk about that. If you don't know the answer, research and learn about schools and programs, and please do rely on your college's career resources to help you research those things and come up with a plan that's going to be a good fit for you. So now we're going to move on to the next essay. Describe a significant challenge or change that has occurred in your life in the last 10 years. When you're working on this question, think about those things in your life that were significant moments. You might want to pause the video and make some notes. Now that you have some ideas about things that have happened in your life, think about whether you feel comfortable disclosing personal information to the readers who are going to review these essays. These are strangers that you don't know. If you choose to disclose information, that's fine. If you feel uncomfortable disclosing information, there's ways that you can include the information without making those disclosures. So we're going to talk about that now. Here's some examples from some actual students, changed a little bit, but this is actual essays that students have written. So for example, in 2018, I received an HIV diagnosis, and what transpired revealed so much about my own health, resiliency, and the inequities in our healthcare system. Or, I was given up for adoption and lived in an orphanage overseas for the first few years of my life. Or, I hid for many years, not sharing my story, hiding from the truth and humiliation of psychological domestic violence abuse. If you're comfortable sharing personal information, then you can go ahead. If you're not, we're going to look at some ways that we can still use your story, but disclose a little bit less of the personal information. Here's how we might adapt our previous examples. We might say, in 2018, I received a health diagnosis, and what transpired revealed so much about my own health, resiliency, and the inequities in our healthcare system. Or, I was given up for adoption and adopted from overseas. Or, I hid for many years, not sharing my story of trauma. Give some thought to whether you feel comfortable disclosing and which story you want to tell. Once you have your story that you want to share about your challenges, then the next part will be, how did you respond and what did you learn about yourself? Here are some actual examples from students to address that question of how did you respond and what did you learn about yourself. Number 1, I've rediscovered my self-discipline and nurture my motivation. Using mindfulness and self-care, I am confident. Or, I have the ability to set goals I never knew I had. I have found others with common goals. I found that I have the strength to fight for what is right. Now we're going to turn to the Oregon essay questions, and where we're going to refer to those as OSAC. There are 4 of them. Personal statement 1, what are your specific educational plans and career goals and why? What inspires to achieve them? Notice that this one is pretty much done. If you've already worked on it for another scholarship, like the Portland Community College Scholarship, you have this material already. All you need to do is adapt it so that it fits within the length constraint. Then we have personal statement 2. What have you done for your family or community that you care about the most about and why? Personal statement 3, describe a personal accomplishment and the strengths and skills you use to achieve it. And personal statement 4, describe a significant change or experience that has occurred in your life. How did you respond and what did you learn about yourself? Also notice, this one is pretty much done if you've done it for the previous example. So notice how often you encounter the same essay prompts, the same questions. You keep responding to the same material. And that's why we encourage you to keep this material, because you'll have the opportunity to reuse it. So let's talk about the ones that we haven't addressed yet. When you talk about what you've done for your family that you care the most about and why, think about, where do you volunteer? If you're a parent, do you have kids in school? Do you take snacks to the classroom? Do you help out with team sports? Are you involved in any clubs at school or organizations at school or outside of school? Do you provide care for anybody in your family? These are all examples of things that you can talk about when you talk about what you've done for your family and your community. Now we get to talk about accomplishments, strengths, and skills. This is a fun topic for me, and it's also something that's very hard for most people to write about. But we have some tools and resources that can help you assess what your strengths are and give you some ways to talk about that. One of my favorite assessments is the VIA Character Strengths Assessment Tool. This comes to us from psychologists at the University of Pennsylvania. They went all over the world to try to develop an assessment that would figure out what a person's strengths were, regardless of what culture that they came from. And they found that all over the world, in all kinds of culture, they could identify 24 different character strengths that all peoples use all the time, and also figure out for an individual which particular character strengths they prefer and use most of the time. The 24 character strengths are categorized as character strengths of courage, character strengths of justice, character strengths of humanity, character strengths of temperance, transcendence, wisdom, and knowledge. When you take the assessment and look at your results, if you feel that those results really reflect you, you will probably be able to think of instances in your own life where you've applied that strength. Let's say, for example, that you take the assessment and you find that you have strengths in creativity, ingenuity, and originality, okay? That is described as thinking of new ways to do things. It's a crucial part of who you are. You're never content with doing something the conventional way if a better way is possible. You use your creativity to find new ways to explain technology to older users. That takes the interests and puts it together with your strengths and puts it together with what you might want to do in your career. Okay, now we've brainstormed, we've thought creatively, we've come up with the stories. Now we turn on our critical thinking brain, okay? We switch from the creative to the technical, okay? Now we have to think about those details that are really, really important. How long should the essay be? Make sure we've answered all parts of the questions. Thinking about how I should start my essay. Thinking about stories that start with pivotal moments. When you start those essays, it is most compelling if you use the senses. See, feel, touch. Something happens. Something changes. Stories happen when there's a pivotal moment, and those kinds of stories grab attention. So, for example, think about, when did something change? An actual example is a student who said in their essay, I was so excited when my brother and his wife were expecting their first child that I flew to Arizona to be with them. As we were sitting in the maternity ward waiting, something went wrong. When an essay starts like that, you can't stop reading. You have to know what happened during that story and how that impacted the person writing the essay and how it inspired their career choice. Once you've thoroughly answered your questions, you've figured out what your story is, you've started the essay with a compelling turning point moment, and you have a conclusionary sentence, now you've finalized it, now you're ready to apply for scholarships. You're ready to use this material for new opportunities, and you're going to save this and come back to it and reuse it. We're going to mention one more scholarship opportunity. That is Phi Theta Kappa. Phi Theta Kappa is the association for high achieving community college students. If you're at a university and you're getting good grades, you'll have a different organization. In this particular case, we're going to look at two different questions. And what I want you to keep noticing is how there's so much overlap between these scholarship opportunities that you're going to find. So the first question is, explain what you believe to be the most pressing ethical leadership challenge facing those serving in your career field today. How can you exercise positive leadership to combat this challenge? This might be a very difficult question if you're brand new to a field of endeavor. So we're going to talk about this. Before we do, though, I want you to notice the second question, you're pretty much done. Because what's that second question? It's obstacles. A time when you faced a challenge, a setback, a failure. Guess what? Challenge, there it is again. So as you can see, this issue of challenge, it just keeps coming up over and over. And once you've completed an essay, we can go back to that material, reuse it. We're pretty much done with that question for Phi Theta Kappa. So let's go back to talking about pressing ethical leadership questions. My favorite place to understand an industry or a field of endeavor is the trade association. So what is a trade association? It is a group of people or companies in a particular business or trade organized to promote their common interests. For example, most Americans have heard of the American Medical Association. They're famous because they keep popping up in headlines. They're doctors, and so people want to have their opinions represented. So you'll see them showing up in headlines like, Congress is scared to take on the American Medical Association over opioids, or American Medical Association weighs unprecedented gun reform platform. There are trade associations for all kinds of professions. One that I'm sharing with you here is the American Marketing Association, because they are one that has college scholarships. Many of these trade associations do have scholarships. It's one of the places that I'm going to recommend that you look for scholarships. It's also the place that I'm going to recommend to find out what are the big issues of the day in that field of endeavor. If I'm brand new to an industry, I don't know it very well, I'm just starting out in school, I don't really have any idea about what their ethical concerns are, I'm going to go to that trade association. I'm going to see if I can figure out what they're talking about, what they're writing about, what kind of issues are coming up in their social media feeds or wherever they're publishing information. It's really important that you stick to the limit. You want to review that word limit or their character count and stay within it. Anything that you write and upload that's past that limit will not be read by the readers and will not help you get points toward your scholarship application. We're here talking in the beginning of 2022. So the upcoming deadlines that we're trying to help students prepare for are the Portland Community College Foundation Scholarships, which are due on February the 1st. We also have upcoming deadlines for the Oregon Office of Student Access and Completion, also known as the OSAC, that's coming up March 1st. These Deadlines can change, so please do check your school's deadline, check your state's deadline, check what the deadlines are so that you're sure that you're ready. And then next year, when you're ready to do this again, you'll have material that you can work with. Update, change as needed. You won't have to start from scratch. I hope that this presentation helps you put together the information that's going to help you succeed at writing scholarships, even if you have a tight deadline, and we're using that material year in and year out. My name is Becky Washington. I'm a Career Services Coordinator for Portland Community College, and I put this information together with my friend and instructor, Sherry Guess. We want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to be successful in your efforts to apply for scholarships. Another resource that's available with offices in many different states is the Educational Credit Management Corporation. They have lots of resources to help you research financial aid, research scholarship opportunities, and actually reach out and get help applying for anything having to do with financial aid. Whether you have a lot of time before that scholarship deadline, or you just found out about a fantastic opportunity and it's due in a couple of weeks, it's go time. Let's do this.